Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fantasy Forecheck, brought to you by the all-new Ram 1500 Sport. I'm Andy McNamara alongside Nick Alberga, and today we're going to take you through waiver wire pickups, sleepers, 4-game slates, which teams to avoid, and of course, how to win some money in the Ram Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool. So stay tuned for that. But Nick, the injuries continue to star players. It's been unreal, and you're never going to replace the stars on waivers or whatever. You're looking for Band-Aid solutions, and luckily we got some.
Yeah, we do, and it really is unbelievable. Every season we talk about this, only a month into this season, a couple notable injuries again this week. Vladimir Tarasenko, Gabriel Landeskog. It's sort of fascinating in my fantasy thoughts, in my 20 fantasy thoughts, I should say, on Sunday. I broke down some of the records with teams and who have lost pivotal guys. Believe it or not, Evgeny Malkin misses 11 games, and Pittsburgh still goes 7-4-0. And
wow.
You know, the prevailing story with that is certainly in the fantasy world is how many guys seem to step up in the absence of the big stars. You look at Nashville and Philip Forsberg misses 5 games. A guy like Calle Yarncroke, even a Jared McCann in Pittsburgh has been an admirable replacement there. Alex Kerfoot in Toronto. So that's sort of my sidebar story this week, is how many guys seem to elevate their play when it matters most.
And when you look at Colorado, really, they've been double dipped, right? Landeskog, Rantanen. You would first want to look within, to your point there. So what are we going to? JT Compher, Nazem Kadri? It depends on lines, power play time. Like, you don't love it, but someone's got to eat up those minutes.
Yeah, that's right. And unsurprisingly at that, like, Colorado's really struggled without these two pivotal players in their lineup. I mean, there's only so much Nathan MacKinnon can do, clearly. But I think when you're looking at possible Landeskog replacements, you're looking on the top line there. It's Nazem Kadri with MacKinnon and Jonas Donskoy. 10% ownership when it comes to Donskoy right now. Personally, I would go outside of Colorado. I think they will struggle to find their offense now that their secondary scoring has been stripped to go and compensate on the top line. But I'd look at guys like Jaden Schwartz on that top line for the St. Louis Blues. I really am pimping Alex Galchenyuk this week. Evgeny Malkin is back and healthy. We'll tie it in full circle. Galchenyuk, 30% owned in leagues. He's in a contract year. I think it's inevitable, at least in my opinion, that the likes of Galchenyuk and Malkin will get going together. Other options as well, Jason Zucker with Minnesota and Jacob Vrana with the Washington Capitals.
And we love the 4-game teams that go throughout the week and the slates, because that's where the simple equation, Nick, right? You play more, you get more fantasy points. There are 12 teams that have 4-game weeks, so there's lots to choose from. Now, on the other side, too, you have to keep in mind teams that only play a couple of times. And on that front, you have Anaheim, Buffalo, Dallas, Tampa Bay, and Washington. So on the 2-game side of things, you're missing some big weapons on Anaheim, Tampa Bay, and Washington especially.
You are, and you know, I've zoned in on 3 teams, especially if you're in standard Yahoo leagues, that you want to look at because of their magnificent Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday schedule. A similar schedule, by the way, for the New York Rangers, but the 2 teams to look at. The Detroit Red Wings have the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and same goes for the Edmonton Oilers.
Right.
When it comes to Edmonton, it's tough to pluck some guys off waivers. I think if you want to look directly at Zach Kassian's the only guy I could come up with who's 30% owned right now. Although his exposure to McDavid and Draisaitl hasn't been as lengthy as it was earlier this season. I think from a fantasy pool perspective, clearly not to foreshadow anything, but I will go with Connor McDavid as my Ram-capable pick this week. Easy decision. Yeah, exactly. Him and Draisaitl are ripping it up, and I'm riding that well. I have mentioned it time and time again already on this show. As long as those guys are at 4-game weeks, you have to ride that, especially when it comes to Connor McDavid. And James Neal's another guy you can find legitimate value right now in the Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool. I know he's tapered off as of late, but 11 goals. He's 1 point in the Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool. And then you look at Detroit. That top line, they've been doing a lot of brilliant things so far. Dylan Larkin at 3 points, Tyler Bertuzzi at 2, and Anthony Mantha, I think, great value at 2. And guys maybe you pluck on the waiver wire when it comes to Detroit. Philip Hronik, on the back end, 23% ownership. And also Andreas Athanasiou, who has really struggled, but he has the potential to be a breakout player.
Yeah, and those are some smart DFS plays as well.
Correct.
On an individual basis. Let's get to some of those waiver wire pickups overall. And I know we said Anaheim's only playing twice this week, so this is a bit more of a longer-term deal. I can't get enough of Ryan Getzlaf. Like, what can the guy do? Last 4 games, a goal in each one. He's averaging over 13 fantasy points per game. He's owned in less than 40% of Yahoo leagues. What more does the guy have to do for you? Right? Buy you dinner, shine your shits. Like, Ryan Getzlaf, go get him. Getzlaf. He's an oldie but a goodie. You got to light him up. He's my top guy.
Ryan Getzlaf could buy dinner for this entire building
Yes.
if he wanted to. He's got a lot of coin, if you know what I'm saying. But surely a guy I touted in my Sportsnet 20 fantasy thoughts this week. I think the one thing I've noticed, and he's a guy who I had ranked higher than anybody else in terms of the fantasy perspective going into this season, a bounce back candidate. And the thing I've noticed with Ryan Getzlaf, he's shooting the puck more under Dallas Eakins.
Yeah.
I understand it's a small sample size, just 15 games as we speak right now, but his shots per game are almost up 0.5 to what they were last year. So certainly really exactly. And that's the thing with Ryan Getzlaf. They're getting top 6 scoring right now, and Anaheim's been a brilliant story. On that note, I'm going to go with Ryan Strome of the New York Rangers. Right now, Mika Zibanejad's banged up, so a guy I'm looking at this week, especially everything just mentioned, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday schedule for the New York Rangers. I'm going Ryan Strome. Any exposure to Artemi Panarin is good exposure. Jesper Foss is playing on the other wing, and it's unbelievable to me that, when it clicks for some players, and Ryan Strome off to one of the best starts in his early career. He's got 11 points in his first 11 games to start this season, Andy.
It's working.
Yeah.
It's working. On the back end, I'm double quacking. I'm flattening my wings twice this week, Nick. I'm going Hampus Lindholm off the lower body injury. He is a consistent over 20-minute-a-night guy for ice time. So he's going to be on the ice. He's going to get opportunity. And he's someone who, he can get you a bunch of assists. He had 133 block shots last season. Not a fantasy superstar, but a great option to play, slide in on slow nights or for DFS depending.
And I'm so fascinating from that perspective on the back end. You even look at Josh Mahara, who got called up the other day, gets 3 points. They got Lindholm, they got Fowler. There's so many options who can step into that role, and that's why it really has been an embarrassment of riches there. Even a Brandon Montour, who's now with the Buffalo Sabres. Like, there are a variety of options that you could always utilize on the back end when it comes to Anaheim, so I like that pick. For mine, I'm going to go to Arizona and Alex Goligoski, a 4-game week for Arizona. He's been sneaky underrated good so far this season in terms of point production from a fantasy perspective. 27% ownership when it comes to Goligoski. The Coyotes, are legitimate. I'm talking football because you do the football stuff.
That's right.
But the Coyotes are legitimate in my world. It's been an impeccable start. You look in between the pipes with Darcy Kemper. He's been unbelievable.
Sure.
Maybe the front runner as we speak for the Vezina Trophy. It's very, very early. But when you look at Goligoski, he's notched at least 1 point in 6 of his last 8 games. He's covering a lot of stats as well. Power play points, shots on goal. So I like Goligoski this week. And since we're on it, I'll go in between the pipes. And you did the double quack. I'm going to go with the double Broadway, if you will. Alexander Georgiev. I think
done.
You're welcome. Henrik Lundqvist is getting a little long in the tooth. I still think he's a good goalie, but I think they're going to give finally some opportunities to the younger cat. And Georgiev, coming off last year's strong season where he backed up, getting more opportunity, 16% ownership. His numbers are really, really strong so far. 3-2-1, a 2.27, 933. Who do you got in between the pipes?
I like that pick. I'm going with the Canucks. 4-game week, and Thatcher Demko available in 79% of Yahoo leagues. It's great yelling in. Demko, get over here. Get in there, Demko.
Thatcher, hello.
So, but for Thatcher Demko, now you're splitting time with Markstrom a little bit, but you think he's probably going to see at least 2 this week in the Vancouver 4-game slate. And all this guy does, just like with Ryan Getzlaf, all he does is score goals and get you fantasy points. Same with Demko. 1.78 goals against, double-digit fantasy points in every single game this season. So not even one dud or outlier. Double-digit fantasy points. I think it's somebody you can put on as your second goaltender, and DFS-wise, matchup depending, you slide him in and you're comfortable.
It's very interesting in that aspect when you talk about last year and the St. Louis Blues and Jordan Binnington. I don't know about you, but a question I'm frequenting quite a bit on social media is who's going to be this year's Jordan Binnington? Right. Well, I offered this a couple weeks back in my musings for Sportsnet.ca. Some guys who are projected to take that next step in their career. I think Thatcher Demko is a guy with the Vancouver Canucks. I think Tristan Jarry is a guy who's going to get some prime opportunity at some point in time with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But Vancouver, impressive across the board when it comes to fantasy value. I like JT Miller on that top line. Elias Pettersson is all-world right now. He's an unbelievable player. Brock Besser, Alex Edler, Quinn Hughes dodged a bullet, which is great news for that team, and it sounds like he'll be back very, very soon. So Vancouver, unlike other years, there's a variety of routes you can go from a fantasy scenario.
Yeah, they're looking really good. What else looks good, folks? How about the Ram Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool, where you can win some terrific prizes? And the Fantasy Forecheck is brought to you by the Canadian exclusive Ram 1500 Sport. The full-size pickup gives Canadians exceptional capability under the hood, advanced technology inside, and impeccable styling throughout, just like this show. It's the Ram 1500 Sport, and it's designed for life in the North. So here's how the contest works. The pool, if you have not been in it, you need 6 forwards, you have 4 defenders, and you got 2 goalies. Out of that group, the forward group, defense, and goalie, you ram capable up 1 player from each section. What does that mean? You get double the points. So it's a section where you don't necessarily have to overthink from a sleeper standpoint, but you want to make sure that the star power is playing in enough games. So for this week, for example, I'm loving Ryan Getzlaf. I'm not putting Getzlaf in as my Ram capable because he's not playing enough. Who do you got at forward?
Yeah, and I think the key is to extract value too.
Yes.
Certainly with some of the 12 teams we mentioned who have 4-game weeks, you clearly want to go with some of those guys. Again, I've identified Ryan Strome at a 1-point value. Anthony Mantha at 2 points I really like. I wrote Elias Pettersson last week. I'm going at it again. At forward, we joked about this a couple weeks ago, but I think anytime Edmonton has 4 games, how could you not pick Connor McDavid in terms of doubling up the point percentage? So easy one for me. I'm going to go with Connor McDavid.
Connor McDavid. And we should say, too, the players are each valued 1 to 4, and you have 30 total points to work with. So you can't just stack everyone. If you go heavy,
the Leafs.
Right, you know what? If you go heavy, let's say Draisaitl and McDavid, at some point in some area, you're going to have to go with some singles.
Yeah, you got to compensate, and that's why I filtered in my forwards. I got McDavid, Pasternak at 4, John Tavares at 3. Pettersson 3, and then I got some low keepers and guys like Mantha and Ryan Strome.
Now you mentioned the Leafs. I'm going with Austin Matthews. 4-week game slate for the Maple Leafs. The Leafs have been a bit of a roller coaster this season, but Austin Matthews has been consistent. He is second in the league overall in scoring with 11 goals. You got to love Austin Matthews, and it seems no matter what the overall projection of the Leafs are and how many questions there are, you can count on Austin Matthews.
Yeah, and I think from a fantasy perspective, a lot of people are waiting for the dam to break when it comes to the Maple Leafs. They're looking for that signature breakout game, so I don't think you can go wrong with Austin Matthews, and I wonder if he gets a bit of a jolt. Same goes for Mitch Marner. We expect John Tavares back this week for the Maple Leafs, so look at that. On the back end, speaking of the dam breaking, I can't promise anything great in terms of fortunes in between the pipes for New Jersey. They're defensive disaster, but I'm looking at PK Subban. Big pickup in the offseason for the Devils, a 4-game week. So I'm going to go with Subban. I'm going to capable him up on the back end. And I'm hoping he breaks out eventually, so I'm going to put my money on it this week.
I like that. I'm going to go Roman Josi with the Nashville Predators. And a bit of an up and down fantasy season, but he is averaging over 10 fantasy points in his last 7 games, so I'm going to tag him. And I like the schedule this week in 3 games against the Red Wings, Avalanche, and Sharks, so there's going to be opportunity there.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll talk in between the pipes, and we can come together on this one. We both agree on one person, and again, the Boston Bruins seem to be pulling the Tampa Bay Lightning from last year, where they're going to not only clinch the division title, but also the conference, the NHL by about mid-November. Maybe American Thanksgiving. Again, you're a big football guy. We all know the importance of that weekend and week.
It's a stepping stone. It's a milestone.
Exactly. Yeah. So Tuukka Rask is our guy, both of us, just more so because of the importance and how Boston just doesn't lose hockey games, and they have a 4-game week here.
Leads the league in goals against. Leads the league in save percentage.
Pretty good. Yeah.
You can't.
How'd they go with Pogge and not Tuukka Rask?
That's a question for another day.
It is.
And that'll do it again for the Fantasy Forecheck. Make sure you get in on the Rams Sportsnet Fantasy Hockey Pool. Let us know how you're doing at AndyMC81 on Twitter.
At the Golden Muzzy.
Gotta love it, baby. We'll see you next week.